Thank you for entering into the alternative space with us. I'm your host, Nitai, and together, alongside Ashley Schroff, we explore the nature of the human experience using insights from various holistic wellness practices, psychological tools, philosophical ideas, and esoteric wisdoms. Through this journey together, we open up real-life examples to create modern applications for these teachings in order to develop new ways to create harmony in our daily lives. And now, together, let's expand. At my funeral one day, someone's gonna quote a philosopher, and I'm gonna be in my coffin and be like, actually.
Got one last thing to say. Can I add value to that perspective?
Just 5 more minutes.
We thought he was gone.
Just give me 5 minutes.
But that's what we wrote about. That's so beautiful about our dynamic is it was available, right? But also we're accepting of where we're both at, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Yeah.
There's no expectation. There should never be expectation.
Of where we're at. In terms of
moment.
when we get into the recording?
Yeah, or anytime, in that moment of this is how I'm going to show up, and then I'm letting you know this is how I'm showing up, and then let it take its course.
Well, that's the kind of the beauty of what we do, because there's an application of all these things we learn about into the ways of daily life, right? So if we're able to introduce our daily life into the show, into the things we talk about, then we can actually give real world applications to all these things that we learn. It's we can put them to the test. Maybe they're bullshit.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's good. We're literally doing this shit together.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're literally doing this shit together, and we're figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. What's powerful about that as well, just exactly that. And when you listen, obviously we're getting over that fear of listening to yourself and not being critical, but also being, okay, how can I be a better podcaster? How can I be better with you? When we do record, and all those things for sure, will come to mind. And then this one, listening to it I know I was listening to myself, but when I was talking about my journey of the cord cutting, and I was feeling it from even myself, which I find value in that, where, do we take more time to record ourselves and go back and listen? It is almost like when I write reflections in my journal, and then I go back and read, and I'm like, where was I when I wrote that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you would even say an ad is and the person we just looked at on Instagram, there's such value in finding those patterns within those thinking processes or those behaviors. So listening to that, I was wow, it was I was there on that journey again with myself or with somebody else. I found power in that, and vulnerability. I was and almost not cringeable, but almost I don't know, something. I felt it, just felt that energy.
Yeah. What's interesting there is that person from your memory is not you now, right? And you can go there, right, if you so desire to do so. And that's very similar for others, other human beings, right? You can kind of, the more you've introspected and learned about yourself, you can look at people around you and completely orient yourself as to where they are in their kind of present day. And that's where you develop a sense of compassion.
Yeah.
And then the realization that, we're really all connected by something, to something.
No, so that's one of our main themes of what we talk about is the oneness.
Well, it's one of the main themes of life.
It should absolutely be one of the main themes of life.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware of it, hopefully you are now.
But you can talk about that, and then as a human being, when you're a human, you're well, what's it doing? Right? What's it doing? Okay, if you want to tell me that's what I am, fine, but what is it doing? give me some direction here. And that's why we point to nature, but that's also why we can look like just reflect on our own individual lives. And everything has been a growth. It's been a constant growth. It's been an expansion. And so we realize that like the act of expression, like coming into being, is what we're doing, right? Like the mere fact that we are beings goes to show that we are moving, right? And there's some type of movement, there's some type of direction, and it's happening over the course of time. And so within this experience, within this embodiment, really what we're coming to understand is that we can't like, when we feel our best is when we're naturally progressing with that expansion. When we feel uncomfortable, it's when we are diminishing anything, we are decreasing anything. And that happens in our thoughts, that happens in our relationships, the way we conduct ourselves, in our bodies. It's all of it. And so the harmony that we're looking to achieve is like from the different planes of what we can experience while we're here. So within us, like, what is the flower that we can cultivate within our minds so that it feels pure and grows in a proper way? Because the foundation for something that grows in a pure and proper way has to be on something that's true, right? And if it doesn't, then from the beginning, it's going to feel diminishing and uncomfortable. And that's why you can look at this whole thing that's growing in its interconnectedness and know that there's nothing that it can ever attain other than goodness, other than love. Because it's like the discomfort and the comfort is like an on-off switch for like you're going in the right direction or you're going in the wrong direction. We're the ones who judge it as good and evil. But ultimately, it's just guiding you through nature towards good. And when you can understand that is the experience that we were having, you lose all your fear because you know it's a good thing. It's a good force that's helping you expand. And then you can have faith in this greater thing that you are, right?
That's right. To elaborate on the point of decision making or making choices or choosing a path or going that as you said, there's no right or wrong. It just is. So figure out, choose something rather than putting so much energy into like, should I or should I not? Just do it. Make that choice. Wherever that choice brings you will bring you somewhere, and then you make the decision to change it as you want to, change it as you will, rather than focusing so much on, I made a mistake and I don't know if I should do this or I should do that. It's like, well, what does your intuition say? What do you really want to do? Go for it. There's no right or wrong.
That's what it's there for.
That's what it's there for. So just go with that flow. I do believe it's still a practice of trusting yourself and knowing that even if you feel in that moment of, okay, maybe this wasn't the decision I should have or should not have done, just knowing that this is what I did, this is what I chose, and that's okay. So the next time around or further, if I want to change up my path, you have that. That's within your birthright. Change it to whatever you want it to be, rather than dwell and go down that path. And so, relating to the experiences I've had more recently, these are decisions that my intuition was talking to me, and this is what felt right for me at the time, and we'll just go with it. And it's so helpful to have the tools that we shouldn't be going through this alone. Have the tools, talk to the people that you trust, do the things that make you feel good, in the moment of these times that are challenging, that have that resistance, or that what you were just talking about, the tectonic plates, whether it's resistance or energy or friction, it just is. So we need to have our toolbox. Why are we doing it alone? Why we're not? We shouldn't be. I mean, obviously we are individuals in this world, and there are times where we just have to, yes, quote unquote, be alone with that, but not to be lonely. And I guess, do you want to comment on that before I?
Sure. Just briefly, I think what you're talking about is the one day at a time, right? Understanding of how you are expanding, right? both Plato, Pythagoras, all these great minds will say that each embodiment, each morning when we come into the world, it's like a school. It's a schooling where we are developing different virtues within ourselves. And it's exactly what you need in order to purify something that's been going on within you and happening outside of you, right? And I think one of the biggest unveilings of our last conversation, right, as it relates to cutting the cord, right, is the process, right? We say everything's expanding. So if we really believe that, we have to understand that things are happening from the inside of us outwards. And if we wanted to make sense of that in our human minds and understand what the growth looks like, right? Again, a flower begins in the soil, in the darkness, and then it comes out into the light, right? So we have to make the process of change exist within our mind before it exists in the outer world with the relationships that happen, right? So what you came to realize is that your intuition was speaking to you from the inside that said something needs to change. Yeah. You realized that what you needed to change was this personal power that existed within you. It needed to come back home. And so after that realization, you're able to look into the outer plane, to the outer world. And in your school of life, you're able to essentially say this relationship needs to go in order for me to claim that back. But you've already claimed it back before you did that outer relationship thing. Yeah. The outer world is a later reflection of something that's been growing from the inside out. And that's something that's not necessarily taught to a human being when they wake up into the world. So we think we have to we have this chaos of all these adjustments that need to go on in order to be balanced, in order to have harmony in our lives. And we're super ambitious because we see other people who have attained these things that might be desirous. But we can't go out and be ambitious in the world until we've done these very fundamental things within us. We need to resolve a lot of things within us. And that's where we have a foundation that we can grow great things out of. Plato and Pythagoras again will say, there's so many things that we want to fix in the world, but that'll never be done. Man and woman needs to, meet the attainment. We need to go and meet the attainment. And so when we stop looking into the reflection in the outer world and trying to fix everything, and realize that all has to happen from within so that we can come and meet the world where we want to have it, where we want to see it. That's when things become so clear. I mean, look at any example in the outer world. We're not going to resolve it until we resolve these in ourselves. Like an example of this is what we do to nature, right? We burn fossil fuels, for example. We litter, we do all this shit. Well, we also do that within our bodies. Right? That's the plane in between our mind and the outer world. We trash ourselves. We take narcotics. We eat processed food. We watch shit that makes us feel diminished and not expanded. And when we do that, we are polluting our system. And so how do we expect to do that, have any impact on the outer world until we do that first? So I think that's something that you don't come into the world hearing and understanding. But once you start to do that practice, you have a little bit of a sense of direction for okay, this is how things work. This is how I can actually serve myself and then go serve the rest of the world. So I think that was an important delineation. I know that's a little bit of a tangent from where you were going, but
it's there's two things there that are really important. From my perspective and experience and knowledge, that process you just spoke of for that core is a form of manifestation. Meaning, right? So in order to manifest, by the way, what you just talked about is manifestation. If you want to manifest good things to happen within you, to happen outside the external world, but nothing happy or joyful or things you actually want from the external world they're not going to happen unless the internal, to your point, whatever's going on internally, we have to be fueling ourselves with positive talk, positive energy. And we have subconsciously limiting beliefs of ourselves that we truly don't deserve XYZ. We don't believe that we are worthy of XYZ. So if we have all of these things, we want the world to change. We want these things to come for us. But how can they when we actually are we're blocking all of that from actually happening if we don't believe that we're worthy that we are connected to the soul, connected to the self, to really know what you do want. And again, like I feel like I've said before in the past, like you start small and then you work your way. So if you do want things to change in the external world and you're happy to say this is what needs to change, has to come from within first.
Yeah.
Whatever those changes are for you. So that is a form of actually being in alignment with yourself to manifest. If you want to use a different word, you can. But if you want to get the things you want, it has to come from a worthy place from inside.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
With a level of expansion, as you mentioned.
I hear you on that, but I can save people decades with this, okay?
Definitely.
Because a lot of people want to go out and manifest things from a place of not loving the self. Mm-hmm. So they think that if they have certain things that they want to attain, that's going to fill the void from within them. Yeah. And these aren't things that are actually going to do that. You know, there are a million ways that can obviously be represented. Mm-hmm. But the thing about going out and wasting your energy trying to manifest things before you really find love within yourself is this is going to save you a potential lifetime if you haven't really thought about this, right? If you have to love yourself, you have to love yourself. You have to come to love yourself from within. And the deeper you go into that, you start to realize what we were talking about, where it's a purification of what's going on inside of your heart and your soul. And when you do that, things become more clear because you know what your purpose is, how you can help things expand in the world. And when you do that, it's not confusing as to what you want. There are so many people I know who just simply don't know what they want to do with their lives. And it's not a tragedy. It's just today, let's figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only ourselves who are telling us that it's difficult. That self-talk is one of the things that we're purifying by going inward, mm-hmm. right? So instead of going out and trying to manifest all these things that aren't actually meaningful, we realize that we can become the most unbounded thing. Mm-hmm. Why would you ever want any one item or object when you can become the most cherished and sacred and valuable thing, right? It really puts things in perspective because you're living here every day, every second. You want to get a car that you only drive in for part of your day, or do you want your vehicle, right, your body, your mind, mm-hmm. to always be the best experience possible? And so that's where we start. And then we go to the outer world. So in terms of being confused and spending all this time and energy trying to manifest specific things, first cultivate in really enriching soil, right, for the seeds that you want to grow to blossom from within to without.
That's exactly. That's exactly our point. The point is the starting from within and the pure thoughts and the pureness, and I would even add that for me, the self-love and loving the self has come around for me more recently, even more so, which from the beginning of our podcast recording to now, and telling you at one point, looking in the mirror, not knowing who I was, right? So which is okay. That's part of my journey. That's part of why I'm here on this earth, to figure out what that is for me. And that's the beauty of that challenge. So for me, it was to tell anybody right now, you love yourself now in this moment. It's not because you think it's not about perfectionism, as you say, we're perfect the way we are in this moment. We have just accepting whatever happened in the past as part of the self-love. Mm-hmm. Being okay with what is. That's where we all have to start, from that foundation of your truth. Of it's not like if I lose 10 pounds, if I have these external things, if I look prettier or read this book, I then can start to love myself. You're waiting for the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Start now, saying that you love yourself, even if you don't. And I've said this to people, even if you don't 100% believe it, you will override your mind and get that toxicity out of your body of not loving yourself. Take the comparison out as well. Never compare yourself to somebody else. Celebrate where you're at. you're this beautiful human being, and the beauty of the journey of, even if you don't know why you're here, that's the discovery of it. Just roll with it. And that was part of my ugliness. Part of my unloving was, I know I have purpose here, but I don't know what it is. I feel lost. Like whatever that's part of the feeling I felt. And not like other people were necessarily contributing to that. It was just me, and I just knew. So the more I just went inward, the more I just took the tools that I needed for me, journaling, writing, to other people, reflections, just really sitting and listening to myself. It's fucking hard. It's painful. It hurt. Like it still does. So that's I think, because you asked the question why people would not, and I would say for me it was because it was too scary. It was too fearful. It was too painful. It was too whatever it was. It was just like, and sometimes you just don't know how. So that would be my simple version of that process for me.
I'm going to go back to the beginning of what you said, and then I'll kind of work my way.
Okay.
But
not that this has to be about me.
But I think that, no, I'm generally speaking, I think for our audience, it might be fucking annoying to hear in the context of our individual lives, seeing ourselves as perfect, right? And seeing the outer world as perfect. Because if you like come here and you look at the world, you're like, obviously that's bullshit, right? And from our perspective, it's like, obviously that's bullshit. But so when I'm talking about seeing the world as perfect, it's not being complacent with your circumstances. It's understanding, like when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about a much bigger thing. I'm saying this process, this sphere that we were talking about, since that is the evolving thing that we're part of, the expanding thing that we're part of, there is a perfection, there's a divine order to that is undeniable if you pay attention to the patterns. Now, in the context of our own lives, we are a tiny cell in this body, right? We are a tiny cell in that body. And when we are disconnected from the order of things, we become a cancer, right? That's really what cancer is. It's an autonomous cell that does its own thing, and it creates chaos within the organism. So within the order of things, we have to realize that we have a responsibility. And if we're not attuned to that, then it'll just feel like we're sick or the world fucking hates us, right? And so I can be empathetic with a listener who says, I'm not seeing the world as perfect because the world around me doesn't look perfect. But it's like, no, the things that you see and judge as evil or bad or imperfect are the work to be done. And that process of suffering, that process of pain, that process of discomfort, the process of not knowing, right? These are things that we are here to overcome. And it really is that simple. You will be rewarded through your intuition, through your body, through the relationships that come to you, through your finances, through all of it, when you can overcome those things. And there genuinely is a reward mechanism for all of it. And when it comes to like faith, I mean, it doesn't have to be the gods as personified by all the literature, right? Like it can be whatever language you speak, but you have to like pay attention to what's going on around, because there is an order, there is a system, and there is something that's trying to speak to you, but you've been denying it because you've been looking into the fire, right? You've been looking into the images. You've been looking in the wrong direction. And what I mean by that is like we're looking outward, not realizing that it all happened inside of us before that. And so I wanted to clarify that on the perfection thing, because it totally could seem like bullshit, and I understand that. And then remind me, there's a second thing about love.
Loving yourself, the self-love,
The self-love thing. I mean, the Rosicrucians talk about this too. They say, like Rudolf Steiner and that lot of blokes. So they're actually Germans, typically German, but in going inward and loving yourself, right? You're starting to recognize all the bullshit that exists within inside of you, right? Yeah. And the bullshit that we see in other people around us, the stuff that we judge in the outer world, is actually stuff that we know, right? Whoever smelt it dealt it, right? Like that's really what it is. Like you can only call bullshit in other people because it's something that you've done, and it's something that you are doing. And so when you stop judging the outer world and realize that these are all aspects that are going on within inside of yourself. And then you, through your self-love, can have compassion for yourself for feeling those things, and you overcome them. Then when you look out in the outer world, you have compassion for everybody. And when you love yourself, that deepens and it also starts to expand. And that becomes a love for the outside world and an understanding of the outside world and how it's all going through the exact same thing that you're going through. And that's going to help you attain this understanding of the oneness and the interconnectivity of everything, right? And so I think images can help understand what's really going on, but I think we need to reflect in a way where we can actually zoom out from the actual orientation of what our life is and realize, right? Because if we're thinking the same way from the exact same perspective in our mind, we're never going to get anywhere. Being able to alter our perspective, and that can, the visualization of altering your perspective can literally be a bird's eye view, just looking back on your life as if it's not you who was doing everything, but something else, some other force took control. And in large part, that's what happened. In large part, that's what happened until you wake up and you realize that I can take control of my body and move it the way I want it to instead of it telling me when it's hungry, right? I can take control of my relationships and completely disconnect from the things that are negative and diminishing. And I can actively input into those relationships when I want to give a sense of expansion. That's purely our sovereignty. But a lot of people don't recognize that they have the choice. And that's the only reason it's worth talking about, right? Because you want to create more opportunities in the world for people to wake up. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably people who are deep in that. So what I'm excited for is one day reaching people who currently don't give a shit, accidentally stumble upon a little glimpse of information that tells them that everything starts in their mind. They purify that. Everything else changes. We're looking into the maze. So when it comes to self-love, I mean, it is the beginning of all things.
It's the beginning. Yeah. Love that. Thank you for that expansion.
Yeah.
That's expansion.
And you had more to say, so I'm sorry to...
No, I was just going to elaborate a little bit on expansion, and you did that justice just now. Expansion is also, I would say, connected to recognizing patterns within ourselves, and that expands us because then you have a new perspective, you have a new open-mindedness about things that you maybe didn't know about or weren't aware of. So it's a level of awareness at some level of awareness at some level. But yeah, so to expand yourself and also to be around people that expand you, that teach you things that are new, that you contemplate, that you ponder, that whether or not it doesn't even matter to agree or disagree, but it's I haven't thought about it that way. So that is powerful. And so part of my process of the releasing of people, things, whatever that aren't serving me, they're not expanding me. It's in a sense holding me back, and so that for me that's a feeling and a visual of this block, this wall of so releasing those things, whatever they are, and allowing the people and the things and the opportunities from the universe to expand me. That is for me massively enlightening, and I'm just hooked on the expansion part of not only my own consciousness, my own expansion of my conscious and perspective and learning, mainly about myself, obviously, first and foremost, so then I can continue to expand others. And people that expand us as well, if we want to talk about people that expand us or experiences that expand us, that can be a different uncomfortable, that can be a different, but in a good way, in a good positive way. So why not? And I did bring up last time, it was, I used the word emulate. But people that and what I guess what I meant by that was somebody that person's going to expand me because I'm going to learn something from them. I want to be around their energy. I want to be around their just like their aura, because it's something about them. So in a sense, I want that vibe from them, with that vibrational energy to like seep into me. So yeah, I guess, I mean, if you to use the word emulate, I would use it in like that kind of a positive way, or I don't know what the other word is that you used last time, but yeah, if we want it, I guess with expansion, you also have to be okay, as you said, like, you have to like the bullshit that's within us. Like, the more you love yourself, then you realize, oh, I'm full of like, there's some shit I gotta right work through, work out. Exactly, with compassion.
But that's the point, right? So that goes back into trying to fix the outer world, right? You're not going to clean mud off the floor with more mud, right? That's not how it works. No. So we have to become cleaning utensils, right? We have to become cleaning supplies in order to clean out the outer world. We are not that as a civilization right now, unfortunately. But it's okay, because we're in a place that's headed towards good. There's no other way. There's nothing else, like there's no other option. And this context, right, of a world where we're so divided, where we're so polarized, it goes to show you the one lesson that we need to learn right now is love, to connect it, right, to have compassion. And it's like, that's such a cute little fairy tale that we get to live in, but we can't see it for what it is. We're too distracted by what's going on outside of us to realize that we keep choosing sides. We keep choosing the wrong pole. We can't hold two realities at once. And so when we wake up to that, the process of waking up to that is, at first when we realize it, we almost are ashamed of ourselves. Because like, how could we not have seen this all along? How could I have lived so many years of my life where I didn't realize that my mind was controlling everything and I was just reactive to everything? And after you feel this sense of guilt almost, you want to like repent, right? You want to like, you don't know where to necessarily, unless you were a person of faith to begin with, but you want to repent. And this is what the books are telling you, right? It's not demanding that people go and repent. These are patterns that are saying, it's not saying in order to be, wake up, in order to begin the journey, you need to repent. It's saying, no, this is a natural thing that can happen. And I just want you to know that you might feel this way. And we took it as such a dogmatic thing that you have to go and repent your sins. Our first episode was, people going for confirmation, right? And things like that. It became dogmas because we've decided that they are dogmas. And this is why, a lot of the best wisdom doesn't have a creed, because it becomes that in a world of dualism, right? So in overcoming, right, it needs to be like a context by context basis. The words I'm saying right now at this day and age might be relatively clear, but they're not going to necessarily make sense in, whatever the next generation is. Without digressing on you.
You're gonna write a book anyway or something. So then the legacy will remain of your word.
But the legacy is each interaction we have, right? It's not an ambition for my voice to reach so many people. The legacy is the impression we're making in this energetic sphere that we live within, right? And when you're talking about emulating, I don't think that's the right word. I think it's magnetized, right? You are in a resonance that you had to attain through these series of overcoming of the bullshit that's going on inside of your mind. And as you categorically, through each school of every day of life, realize the things that have been patterns and habits of thinking in your mind that you're overcoming, you're purifying, and you're expanding, right? And as you do that, your wavelengths are going to start to match up with people that you look up to and admire and love to be around. And when you do that, you realize that, yes, there is a magnetism to these parts of that sand sphere, right? Where based on our energy levels, we are attracted to one another. But there are no cells in our body that can take up the same space, right? And so we're not emulating. We're not emulating. But we can look at truth in others and use that as context for ourselves if we might be curious as to which side of the pole we want it to be on, right? What's the trait that's in me? Is it a good trait or a bad trait? We can look at someone who seems to have it aligned and figured out, and we can use that to orient ourselves.
Well, that's exactly what, that's what I mean by emulate. Yeah. And then you use the word admire. As long as we're using these, again, as a tool, just to look to another in that way, to better the self, to improve on the self. It's a level of curiosity. So,
but you know what? I'm not being fair, because there are like, I personally don't like the word emulate, but there's another way to look at that. So to be fair, like to kind of get myself to stop being so mean to you.
You're so mean.
The view that I can see emulation, and I'm sorry for being so. See, I'm being dogmatic. Listen to me.
You're being dogmatic.
Yeah, listen to me go. It's not fair.
I don't even.
I'm sorry for.
You always come back around.
I'm being mean. So, when it comes to emulation, the view that would make sense to me immediately would be understanding energies, right? And instead of emulating another person, it's like I want to emulate a certain energy, right? And so, outside of the personification of one individual, right, we can be the embodiment of love, for example. We can be the embodiment of truth, of wisdom, of health, right? Like these are things that we can emulate, right? Emulate in who we are. And maybe that's things that we recognize in other people. And the reason I was so dogmatic is because I don't want people to forget how important, how individualization is.
That's right.
Right? Individualization is what gives you power, because you're not worried if you're gonna have to be like anybody, because you're not. And at the same time, you're not putting your energy outwardly and feeding off of outer things, because it all comes from within inside of you. So that's the only reason I was dogmatic. It was because I don't want people to think that they get their power from the outside. But I think it's not that it's a bad word. So I'm sorry for always arguing with you on that. But.
No, I love that, because we have our different perspectives, and we, come back around, and there's certain things we talk about, and I go back and research, and luckily our egos are in check, and we're always learning. But I actually appreciate that clarification on what emulate or admiring. Because it's not about the external, it is about the internal of the person. If we're talking about a person, it's that feeling you get of the energetic, magnetic, for sure, love, compassion, and the spirit, the energy. I mean, I know for me, when I'm attracted to somebody, to a person, if I want to make a connection, it's that energy. You feel it, you just know it right away. And so there is that, the magnetic energy is massive, or it's a magnetic. Which is what I did last week, is to break that magnetic energy through the cord, because it was diminishing me. Yeah. It was sucking out of me rather than flowing back through me and into me. Right. That's right. We just make sense of it all in these conversations. No, it's okay to challenge. Is there a bird in here?
I feel like there's one in my bag.
You're like Mary Poppins. Did you have a bird pop into your bag on the way here?
Oh, man.
That was awesome. I appreciate your introspection and coming around in your own way.
The simple tone of my voice had me wake up. I was like, that's not fair, right? Because I had my thing that helped me make sense of it. It's not that emulate's bad. Again, it's coming from love, of understanding that I don't want people to get confused in the guise of other people are more advanced than them. That's not a good way of thinking for anybody. Yeah. In learning and in growing, you realize again that it's all connected. So we're not more advanced than anybody. We're simply helping each other on their path of development. And the more we realize about ourselves, the more work we realize we have to do, which is very humbling. It's very humbling. That's part of the reason I don't let people give me compliments, because that's a treacherous path for me. So I actually usually don't even respond, because if I gave people acknowledgement for giving me a compliment, they'd keep doing it. And so when people give me, I want to like trust my intuition that I'm doing the right thing more than like what the outer responses and stimuli are, because I know, most of the people I'm around like know good from bad, but ultimately there's stimuli outside of me that doesn't necessarily know good from bad, right? So if they're rewarding me for being incredibly, ruthlessly ambitious, that's actually not something I want to be. And so I just want to see clearly, right? You don't need one way of thinking that somebody else thought in order for you to behave in a certain way. So
yeah, we have talked about the compliment thing before, concept, because when you and I do our debrief and we let each other know how we can show up. That we don't want to get that confused with like, I'm actually just telling you what it is for me, the truth that I have from how do we show up better when we do these recordings. So would that be complimentary, or would that be, what is that then? It's yeah.
When we give each other feedback on development, that's our partnership.
Yeah.
Right. We when we last talked about when we regrouped on our last episode, we started to talk about this energy that we feel between us. Right.
Yeah.
Outside of anything woo, we genuinely are able to like tap into this something like a field, right, where we see each other in portrait mode and we're just having a conversation and things are kind of just flowing out of us because we're present, right? Yeah. And so we have this thing that we are kind of chemically configuring, in front of us. It's like this orb of you feel it, right? It's like right there, and we are each contributing to the progression of this thing and the development of this thing. It's like a child, right? Yeah. We are growing this like child. Yes, and so probably the weirdest way anyone's ever talked about a partnership before, but that's what it is, right? We are nurturing this energy that exists between us, right? And of course, right? Of course, there are going to be things that can be improved in order for that thing to become as perfect and beautiful as possible. And so part of our responsibility is to like allow the thing to take the life of its own when it's time for its expansion. That's right. That being said, outside of that thing that's existing between us, it's important for the two parents of that energy, the two partners of that energy, to look out for it, right? And so since it took on a life of its own, we can't let our own inner things hinder the growth and development of that thing. So ultimately what we have to do is like have these little agreements between us and like, hey, we can adjust this. Am I doing enough for you here so that you can make the right adjustments when it's live? That's right. And so it really is what we're doing. So it's not compliments, it's feedback. And the feedback can be positive. That's right. The feedback can be negative because otherwise the partnership doesn't know what's working and what's not working. It's just this magical thing where sometimes that energy is light and sometimes it looks like garbage, right? So the feedback is the agreement between the partnership that within that child, that energy, that system is going to be incredibly engaging and expanding. And that's kind of my view on it.
It's a good-looking baby. And I guess I bring this up because of when certain people we meet or they're attracted to our energy. And so that's what I meant, like when someone says a comment about my energy in a way that's like complimentary, it's not like I let it go to my head, but it's more just like being aware of my energy because that's just who I am, but it's also putting it out there to share. And like if you're walking down the street and someone's like giving off this energy and their body's closed and they're just looking down and there's like that still gives off a sense of energy where like when your shoulders back, head up, making eye contact, whatever it is you're doing, and you have this magnetic energy, which is which is what I would like to hear from people.
Totally.
Right.
Well, you give off incredibly good energy, incredibly loving energy. You really do. But when we can't let the outer world tell us what that looks like, because it can be confusing. I mean, if you trust the person and if you know the person,
absolutely.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
But then there are a lot of people who will be
You just said that to me, and I trust you.
a lot of people will be attracted to us because they are from a place of deficiency and they recognize a place, something that can fill a void within inside of them, right? And those are leeches, those are vampires, right? They're trying to steal your energy in order to consume themselves. This is why, this is the exact same thing that we were talking about when it comes to manifestation, right? You don't want to manifest, the people who want to manifest things in order for them to be loved are the same people who are going to go and look after other people and say, I want them in my life in order to be closer to love. I want to feed off of this love, right? And so,
that's right.
You can start now by loving yourself, and it might be small, but I realize that planting the seed now and cultivating it and nurturing it and growing it is something that's going to expand from the inside out. So, everything has to start from a seed. And if it wasn't there before, then you just put it there now and say it's there now. And every day, just tell yourself you love yourself, and it's going to grow. And it's going to take time. But again, just like we are cultivating this energy between us from its infancy of our really, adolescent conversations to something that's going to be more mature, right, and more wise in its own life. That's what we're doing with our inner love, right? It's something that we have to let expand. That is what everything in our outer environment, everything in our matrix is telling us to do. And when we don't go against that and we try and just put a tree in the middle of our heart, we're going to know it's not ours.
Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't ours. It's like, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Beautifully said. You're on fire today.
Am I?
Yeah.
I feel healthier
It's
again.
amazing.
It's starting to come back.
Good energy.
Yeah?
It comes from a place of trust and love. No, it's amazing how that knocked you. Like we talked about the unveiling of what that did for you was such a gift for you just to stop and be, because of you were unwell. So yeah, no, you're like, your energy and your light is what's always there, present, but then it's even more in a positive way.
I feel like my heart opened from it.
You do?
Yeah. I think my heart opened more. I think I was a little bit imbalanced in the intellect versus virtue, right? So I was ruthlessly attaining wisdom because I had started to learn things that were really compelling. And then I was lagging in my virtue, right? And the same way we can only call bullshit on other people and judge other people when we are bullshitting ourselves. We can only attain things that are true when we are true within ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? And so the path of truth doesn't have to be things that are read in books. It's actually not things that are read in books. The path of truth is not lying to yourself. Not letting anything inside of you be bullshit. quite honestly.
This is what I journaled about today. It's boxed in truth.
What does it say?
You're amazing. Tell the truth. If you're not telling the truth, there's self-deception, is what you just said. So, which means we don't want to look at the bullshit. We don't want to look at things inside of us that are causing us to not want to look inward. There's that block. What we see in other people, the external world, and then we go and exactly mirroring the same thing. So we're telling ourselves little white lies. We have that narrative in our mind to just convince ourselves otherwise. And then when he was talking about it, I remember who I was listening to, he used the word gong. And that is, I want to say that is a Buddhist word. And that...
It's the large drum, and then they hit it with a... Yeah. That's a gong.
And then they say it's become, the word also means to become familiar with who you are. So that's the process of going inward and finding that inner truth, is becoming familiar with who you are, all of who we are. So by being honest with yourself first, you have to be honest with yourself first. How can you, if you're not honest with yourself, how can you tell the truth? How can you believe in the truth of anything else that you see? So believe in your own inner truth first. So be honest with the self.
That gets into individuation. Don't put that down because you're going to finish. But, but that gets into individuation as well. Meditation. right, is another word for Gonglen. They're kind of a little
I
bit
think you're right,
relatively synonymous. Yeah. And the thing about meditation, think about the word med, right? The outer world is going to come to you in ones and zeros. We are individuating, and we're contemplating ourselves through our meditations and finding what's in the middle, right? What's in between. So if the world came out to you and said, we go from 0 to 1, there's a guy named Matthias Stefano, and he talks about this, and it's a perfect explanation for it. The world will tell you we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we're completely missing the point that there's 0.00001, 0.00002, right? So these things are real, and they're in between the lines. And what we're doing is we are individuating ourselves to make clear this infinite existence that exists within the minuscule nature of things, but also in the grand nature of things. And when we contemplate that, we realize that like we are everything, but we are also fucking nothing. And that's a pattern that gives us context in our life, and it humbles us. We are in the middle of all things, the middle, median, meditate. So, but continue.
No, that's there was not too much more. So when we know the inner truth of ourselves and being honest with yourself, then you share the truth with others from a place of understanding who you are and who you want to be. So to share more authenticity, we have to be with ourselves first and know that intuition, that truth, that inner truth, and then with others. And so and then I wrote something else myself, but it was so powerful. And then actually not too long after that, I decided to actually share a message that was sent to me. I shared my truth. After reading that, I felt really like, yes, this is so powerful for me to read this in this moment when I had read something earlier that was sent to me, and I decided I need to actually say, you know what? This doesn't resonate with me right now. I appreciate what you're doing. You should continue on that journey for yourself. And I'm happy to, be a part of it in the way that I want to be a part of it. But my truth right now is I don't actually want to participate in the way that you want me to participate.
Yeah.
And I said I can either choose to be dishonest with myself and hold that weight because I don't want you to be uncomfortable by that. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I'm just sharing with you that this is where I'm at. So it's like, why am I taking on that energy? So reading that today empowered me to be like, I'm going to write that. And I fucking feel better about it. I haven't thought about it until I just now.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the understanding that you're having inwardly is making the outer world less confusing.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. Did you just make that up? That makes perfect sense. It's exactly right. So really going into that inner truth. I don't know how we came around to truth just now that we were talking, but I just love that I was journaling about it today and that you were talking about it.
Again, that which is true as a cause can only have a true effect.
That's right.
Right? And the cause here being the mind, the effect being your outer relationship. Right? We're in a world of effects. And these are all effects that first took place as a cause that was a seed that was planted in the mind. This is what they talk about with cause and effect, right? But we all think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
We all think that we are this vulnerable vessel in our mind that can be impacted by the outer world. But once we understand that everything happens in the mind first, the cause is in the mind, the effect is in the outer world, that makes things so much more clear. And you're not confused anymore when somebody tells you that you should be this or that or do this and that. It's like, no, like, this is just an effect, and that's not my effect, right? That's not the way I affect.
That's right.
Because I'm clear on the cause, right? And the cause is true, right? Untrue effects are a process of untrue causes. And so, truth and wisdom, again, are happening in tandem with this development of virtue. And it's only to orient ourselves and to nurture our love. Like, that's really what it is. In the context of truth, right? That the inside and the outside, the cause and effect, that also informs that, like, we have to be true to ourselves. We have to be true in our minds before we can find it in the outer world, right? We can't go to the outer world and try and, like, learn the truth. We can actually cultivate the truth from within us and grow it outwardly, because when we know it's true inside of us, we can call bullshit on the outside, right? So if we find ourselves confused in life, it's because we lie to ourselves and we confuse ourselves. But if we purify this lens of truth that exists inside of us, we'll know it when we see it.
Yeah. So then I get that, then it makes me more aware of having that level of compassion for other people. Doesn't mean I have to accept necessarily if their truth is confused by not doing the process of what we were just talking about. But whatever it is they're doing, and that's, have compassion for that. But I guess that's like, really, I shouldn't be so concerned or worried about that, which I'm not. Sometimes I can be, because it depends on who I'm talking about or talking to, but it's more just like, wait, what is my truth saying? What is my inner truth? And because, as you said, it will become confusing if I'm not staying within my truth. So, and it's that, it is the mind, having that truth within the mind of, like, wait, this is where I'm at, this is what I want for myself, that's your intuition as well. And so I just said, listen, this is, and also just knowing that, I guess in some ways, when I say it out loud, it's knowing who I am and how I want to show up for myself, and just letting them know, again, like, with respect, this is not for me. So I want to do what's best for me. And if I'm choosing to make them feel comfortable by not telling them my truth, then I'm uncomfortable. Then I'm lying to myself. Then there's no truth in that. So I'm allowing someone else's discomfort to overcome and overcome my discomfort.
Yeah, I think you were spot on when you said that, when you're cultivating this element of truth, you also develop this compassion, right? Mm-hmm. Because that gives you the understanding and the wisdom that anything that is untrue in the outer world also exists within the mind of the person that's giving you any type of thing that is disharmonious.
That's right.
And when you realize that, you only look at this person as an energy that is cast astray. And you don't want to fight that. You want to help it understand.
Yeah.
And it's this very sensitive thing, because those are people who are still operating in the outer world, and you're giving them that information in the outer world when it has to be something that's grown from within, right? So I think when we tell people to meditate, it's not something to be dogmatic about. Mm-hmm. It's a very gentle reminder that, like, the more time you spend in your mind, the more you'll realize that there is this clutter, and that clutter that exists within the mind are all the distractions from you seeing the world for the way it is, right? And I don't know if that's the perfect way to describe it, but I think as a general statement, it's you who's going through the advancement, right? As you're being more true with yourself, you are starting to be more compassionate for the world. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not even just for us to teach the world how to also be compassionate, mm-hmm. but the very nature of you growing and cultivating this love in tandem with your truth, this compassion in tandem with your truth, mm-hmm. that gives people more opportunities to understand the way things work, mm-hmm. in a natural, real progression.
Mm-hmm. I felt like you touched on something, and if this is what I was thinking and feeling from that was in the moment of, if that person is, say, not necessarily choosing a path or a moment of meditating on something when they send you a message such as that. So because they're not, their clarity is, lack of clarity is more clouded because of wanting to put, and I know I've done this and I think about it a lot, but putting their truth, which is not really the truth. They're so clouded by the external, the things and the fears and the lack of control, and want to getting all that back, and all the things I can do in order to convince another person of their quote unquote truth. It's just because of where they're at. And so it's not, and I know from this person, what's coming is not, it does come up from a place of love, but it's not coming from a place of actually respecting where I'm at and what I've already told that person. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like the first interaction we've had this interaction before, where I've been very clear about my, I know whatever the word boundaries, I've been very clear about my intent. No, I'll leave the word intentions. These are my intentions. This is exactly how I'm showing up for you. And then they're still, giving me this information where I'm like, but I've just told you this is how I'm showing up, and now you're trying to convince me otherwise in order to show up for you the way you want me to show up for you. Mm-hmm. So it felt so good today to tap into the word truth and tap into the idea and the essence of what truth means for me. And I sat with it, and I was like, oh, this is my truth for this particular moment. And I was like, I'm gonna share my truth.
Yeah. A good way to deal with that, again, because we're sitting across the table in this circumstance potentially from somebody who hasn't understood that the way things work from the inside out, right? And your truth came from the inside out. And so a good way to approach a conversation with them would be to tell the narrative, right? Not to tell them to do it, to go be true, but to tell simply the narrative of how you came to that truth. So you're saying, like, looking back in your life, like, these are all the things that speak to me, that matter to me, and that I know for a fact are a part of who I am. This is how they've grown and blossomed in my life. And then I finally developed clarity on them. And through that, that's where I am now. And this is what I'm going to continue to grow. And this is the direction I'm headed in. And and outside of, like, telling other people to go meditate or to go, to that example, it totally helps, because then it's like, I can't tell the tree that it's not a willow, right? I can't go and contend with the tree and tell it that it's some type of, I don't know if it's like called a genus xylem, whatever it's fucking called. But I can't go and contend with that, which is true, right? And so I think we need a little bit of empirical study as to how something became true, because that's the way our Western minds work, right? So it's like, here's a case-by-case basis of why this is undeniable, right? This is a trajectory, this is a growth that is undeniable. And not only does that help in the context of this conversation, which probably is about something else anyways, right?
Absolutely.
But it helps that other person understand the processes that they can undergo in order to have the right perspective when they try and re-engage on the matter that was initially at hand.
And that was, I would say, because of my own, of like, I don't want to put, place the finger, point the finger, no blame. It's just like, I'm at where I'm at, not because I'm better or worse or right or wrong. It's just where I'm at. So just, this is my truth and this is where I'm at. So respect that, if you can, if you will, and if not, it's not for me to decide. But there's always more to those situations. It's not necessarily about that particular thing or that moment or the reflection that was sent. It's always the bigger context of that dynamic in a relationship or friendship. So no, it's the truth is a powerful place to be.
And when you first come across it, when you first get a glimpse of it, I can speak from experience that
please do.
It's scary. When you first come to truth, you realize it's pretty scary, because you've put a lot of energy into things that aren't true. Going back to the Immanuel Kant quote, right? He says, the things that aren't true, you have to let them die. Or the things that truth kill or harm or contend with, let them die. Something like that, right? That's kind of the fault in trying to quote people. I quote philosophers, by the way, so that people are like, who the fuck is this guy who's talking? Right? So it's like I have a little bit of a warrant of interpretation. Right? If you don't want to listen to me, just go read about these guys. That's why I do that. It's not to be like pretend I'm a scholar.
No, not at all. I love it that you share quotes. Please don't ever stop. I think it's hilarious.
But
I mean, not hilarious, but I think it's fantastic. And
are you belittling?
No.
But I think it's to cite my sources, right?
Yes.
So it's like it's not just some,
cite your sources.
Yeah, that's all it is.
No, you're good at remembering the sources. I should actually be more because I write so much that in different podcasts I listen to.
It doesn't matter.
It's dope. The word truth is
it doesn't matter.
The concept is available.
This is a proclamation that like if I ever say something that resonates with someone, you don't have to cite me. Just remember the information that matters. Don't remember my name. Right. It's pretty hard to remember.
Though I repeated one of your quotes the other day, and I asked you who said that, and you're like, "Oh, I said that." I was like, "Yeah, it was you."
But when you first encounter something that's true, and you've been living in an element of untruth, it can be. You don't want to buy into the system of truth because it's like, it's such a waste of energy. And you have to let the untrue die. Otherwise, you're just continuing to go into the spiral of demise. And so, again, it's something that deserves reverence and it deserves dedication, but it rewards you for dedication. It's like anything. Like when we want to learn how to ski, right? But it's been this mystical thing for the longest time. The idea of skiing is mystical, but when you try, you realize that it's possible to learn, right? You might not have like necessarily hit black diamonds on the first go at it, right. But you've seen a process a world that exists where you can develop those skills and get closer to it. And that's the same with truth. Like if you've been living in any element of the lie, but you come across something that's true and you develop something that's true and you dive into it, it'll reward you for the understanding with the new perspective that a true world can exist. And if you dedicate yourself to it and practice it the same way we do everything else, you become more, you're developing your aptitude at truth. And the more you do that, the more you learn, the more wisdom you have. And again, that just goes to show how it is equally a development of virtue where you're removing yourself, you're unraveling, you're taking away all the bullshit to be a pure vessel that's going along the trajectory of truth. There's a seldom spoken of philosopher. His name's Boethius, and I sound like a Pokemon lover. I sound like a kid who's obsessed with Pokemon cards.
That's okay. I have a kid who is, so that works great.
Good. All power to him. But
Pokemon's just taking the world by storm anyway.
But the story is like he was living at a time where you couldn't necessarily be a truth teller because you would get killed or you'd be imprisoned. In his case, he was imprisoned for life, and he knew it. And so his only schooling was to reflect on his life. And he says, like, again, the thing that took him from the point of like being a professor of truth, right? He would go and speak these truths, but then the Catholic Church imprisoned him. I think it was the Catholic Church. Don't quote me on that part, but understand the story.
Right.
Man was imprisoned for being outspoken about things that he believed to be true for life. So he's essentially sitting in this prison, and he realizes that he can no longer have any other outer experience, so he has to reflect on all the events that came to him prior in order to attain truth. And then what he did is similar to what the Greeks do with all the gods, where he personified truth so that he wasn't lonely. And so he was like, I'm going to come to truth. And then he envisioned truth as this thing that he emulated, right? Yeah. Or embodied, but it was a personified energy that he got to sit with. And they even describe, I don't know if this is from Boethius's mouth or not, but they described that an angel came down and kind of embraced him and said, you've served me all your life, so now I'm coming to serve you. And so as he reflects on his life, he is starting to understand that which is true through his dedication to it. Now, what this does is like it gives you this nice little story, but it also teaches you that in truth, in the pursuit of truth, if you continue on that path, it also gives you a sense of courage to move through a lifelong imprisonment, because you know it's going to continuously give you a higher field of perception. And I think that's like a nice little tale to remember when it is intimidating to go and like unravel all this bullshit you've been telling yourself all this time. It's like, no, it's putting you into the right path.
I actually wrote down the word brave and courage as well here. It does give you that level of courageousness of trusting yourself first.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
also the understanding of oneness, right? Mm-hmm. The understanding of oneness will completely diminish your fear. But it is another thing that you have to grow in order to come to that understanding. It's like, if I told everybody that we are all one, they're just like, fuck off, right? Like, out of context, it's just like, fuck off.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand that fully. I fully understand that. And hopefully I'll, a couple times come to a place where it'll help people, like, at least get into that direction. I think a lot of like our listeners probably do have an understanding like this. Yeah. But there's going to be a time where we're going to be saying information where it's like fresh and new, and they're like, I don't want to hear this world about like everything is love. I don't want to hear this world about how we're an energetic sphere. Like, fuck off. And I totally get that. Like, I really do understand that. But the deeper you go, the more you come to realize it. So
yeah, it's the information you're ready to receive when you're ready to receive it. And if you're, as you said, like the people who are listening and respond and have questions about things that we talk about, they are resonance with us for the most part, and they are curious, and they want to know more about what we're talking about, or deepen the perspectives that we share, or I just have simple feedback of like, I was in a place and I listened to you guys, and then it actually gave me new perspective. So yeah, they have, I guess at some level, if they're listening to us, and it's that there's perspectives that they're relatable on. But yeah, then there could be the odd person who's like, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and that's okay too. You're ready to receive when you're ready to receive, and if the curiosity is there and the awareness is there, that's step one.
I personally couldn't give a shit if we were the voices who do it or not. I just know that I have nothing else to say other than like the best I can possibly say about how to help someone find truth and love. And there probably are, definitely are much better voices to do that. But all I'm saying is that like, at least you can hear like a genuine voice that's saying, that's what I'm pursuing. Yeah. And that's what Ashley's pursuing. Yeah. Like, undoubtedly and earnestly, like that is what we're pursuing, right? And so it might not be today, but we understand the process of like how we could potentially get there and what that world could look like. And I think like the rapport you build is the earnestness, and I think that's something I've definitely like come to love about you. Like, you have such an earnest desire to live or to learn, where like you let me go on these tirades, and I almost like want to shut up, because it's like I'm almost like, that is such a beautiful place to be, because I know how beautiful of a place that it is to be. So I want to stop talking, because there is like, the best is when you're like in the presence of something you want to learn, right? And I genuinely learn a lot through like what you say, but also your presence. So like the way you do that, I think it's so earnest and it's so true. So what is kind of hidden in like the conversations we have, right, is that consideration, right? Like the earnestness of pursuing something without like always stating your opinion. Like, I told her to shut up for saying embodiment. Like, that's not fair, right? So, but there's deep wisdom in that, because what you are in a moment of being silent, like when I'm silent and you're talking, or when you're silent and I'm talking, that is the very soil that allows flowers to grow, right? And if we continuously like trying to interject each other, like if I like reject your word, what that does is it hinders the growth of potential flowers. And so, yeah, I guess that was a little digression to say I feel that I'm not going to be so dogmatic at you anymore.
Oh my God, you actually brought tears to my eyes. Tears to my eyes a little bit. That was so beautiful. Thank you. I agree with you. There's, again, it's like the dynamic that we both have with one another is, I know that, like, I've learned from the beginning with you, well, so much, but then also of just like being able to let you flow and let you have amazing tangents, if you want to call them that, but you do, like, it's almost like I don't want to interrupt your thought process. I want you to go there. And it's just like, it does come back around, or it's just like, it's a whole nother perspective that you are like blossoming from. And it's just like branches of a tree. It just keeps going and going. And so it would be a disservice for you also. And this is like completely, it's as a Montessori teacher, when a child is learning, not that you're a child, but when we're learning, you're a child, when we're learning, we're all children in some way. When a child is learning and they have work in front of them or whatever they're doing, even if they're not even looking, or doing something with their hands and they're looking out at nature, dude, they are processing, they are soaking in so much information, and it's neurological pathways that they are developing, and synapses are going off, myelination's going off, like if you want to talk about it in a neuroscience way. Like, it's so, or you just talk about a way that's just super simple. Do not disrupt their pattern of thinking. And when I work with parents, I also say that when I'm working with babies and the moms and the dads, they're like, what are they looking? I was like, just let them look. Don't say anything. They're looking as simple as a shadow. They're developing their trains of like, that gives them such a level of independence and confidence, and also the neuroscience behind that. So yeah, in some ways, I also really truly appreciate what you do say, and I do take whenever I re-listen to us, I go back and I take notes on it, and then I look shit up because I'm like, I don't really know what he was talking about, You
gotta tell me.
No. But sometimes I'm like, it's okay. I'll note to self. I want to look it up and research it, and I'll come back and ask you, or in the moment I'll ask you. Because I want to exactly what you just said. I do want to deepen my knowledge, and I do want to deepen not only for our dynamic and our connection, and for the podcast to be fucking amazing, but it is innate in me to want to learn more and to have new perspectives. And so, yeah, so that's like, there's like a couple different little things I just to enhance that. But so it would be knowing you how I know you now. I wouldn't want to take that, not that I would take it away, but I wouldn't want to, so it's like and again, like, as you said, it's so important to be as present as possible, which is what we're doing. So it's like we're both learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You really do give me a good platform to grapple with ideas, and it's not that I want to hear myself talk. It really isn't. I know. It really, really isn't. It's genuinely that if I'm learning so much because I'm just compelled to, I'm just compelled to, there's nothing I'd rather do more. Whether it's like in my experiences of like social events, or it's like in my most private moments where I'm reading a book, I just have an automatic filter to apply any of it to what that means for the state of myself in context to this greater world, right? And if I can figure out a pattern, I want to bring it here. And what I realize is that like everyone has a capacity of doing that. Like, it completely levels the playing field. When we first started our conversations, I had a vision where, it would kind of be relatively like what it is, but I would imagine that over time we'd want to bring in a lot of other people to talk. And like, that could happen. We could get like amazing people to come here and talk. But the foundation of that was all on a limiting belief that we had nothing worth saying. When there are other experts in the world. Right. And I think that's kind of besides the point of what we communicate here, right? Where everybody has a warrant of interpretation. Everybody has their own school of life. Everybody has the perfect context they need in order to develop and learn the things that they need to learn. It doesn't matter what it is. Everyone has the perfect context that they need in order to develop their soul, genuinely. And so when we can look at the school of life like that, then you have an infinite amount of content, because we're always learning things. We're always expanding in a certain direction. And what a beautiful thing to like acknowledge that and do that alongside you. Like, that is so special, and there is a world that exists where everyone is doing that.
Or should be doing it, or can be doing it. So to inspire people to do that, and you wrote something like saying we made the decision to do this, and we're lucky that I was going to ask you about the word luck, but the word lucky is like that we just, even though we had the limiting beliefs, this was like overcoming them and just deciding, what do we have to lose? Like, what we would have lost if we didn't do this was like, oh, I wonder how that would have panned out. Rather, we're just like, let's jump in. And so I would encourage people to just jump into whatever it is they want to try and do, whether it's a podcast. I mean, the more I talk to people about this podcast, they get excited about it. It's like, I've always wanted to do that. Like, yeah, me too. It's always been on my bucket list. So jump in and do it. And there's no right or wrong way. Just go for it, man. And like, what's so important is, and like some of the shift girls were like, well, what's the process and how did you do that? And like, this is the way you should do it. It's like people were definitely giving us this kind of feedback. Some I shared with you and some I didn't, but it's just like, I'm just letting it flow. We're just letting it develop. It's like the baby, the infancy, the embryo, it's just like grow. Like, well, I'm not going to dictate what this baby's going to do. All I can do is facilitate, love, cultivate, support, make mistakes, fall down, get back up. Like, that's the whole process of of birth, to grow, like growing. So allowing it just to be what it is. If we could start to put constraints on it, then we're not allowing it to be whatever that magic is. So, and again, like part of this process and the platform, if you want to call it, like that's your magic. Your magic is to these ideas and these thoughts and these perspectives that come through you. Again, it would be a disservice for you not to. I know you're not just doing it to hear yourself talk, but you have this stuff inside you. You're going to trap it if you don't talk about it. And when you read the wisdoms that you do read and the philosophers and the things that I do, it becomes more real and becomes more my truth when I do talk it out with people I trust, such as you and such as this trusting and dynamic.
It also creates a meritocracy where I'm not learning for power.
Right.
Because there's a worldview where I don't tell anybody what I'm learning about, and I can completely manipulate anybody because I understand the way things work. And that's not what I'm trying to do.
You could be an evil character if you wanted to be.
Sure, but it would be an evil force within me, right, that I would have to overcome. And right, so again, like, I don't necessarily want to be all-knowing. I want to be all-benevolent.
Didn't you say it on Sunday, like did this part make it into the podcast? You were saying, I don't want to be an asshole anymore.
I did leave that in.
Yeah, okay, I thought you did. I was trying to remember.
I don't know if it was, I don't want to be an asshole anymore, but I was like, I know that I'm as vulnerable as anybody else to just being dark.
Yeah, I think, right? I thought you said asshole. I'm not calling you
I totally said asshole. Okay. And it's
yes,
the truth.
I hear you. Yeah,
right. We can all be assholes.
We can all be dark.
We can, and it's only by being an asshole that I realized that I have a choice to be an asshole or not. Yeah. Right? And so this is the question. Like, someone called me up and had an existential moment.
Oh, cool.
And they were like, Nitai, if everything's perfect, why do people suffer? It's a hard question. It's a really hard question. Because you can go to the people who are like pure, who can seem like purely innocent, right? There's say a child gets an illness, right? That's the perfect example that is the hardest for me to contemplate with, so I'll use that. Some people make the argument of incarnations, right? But that would only make sense in a world where that child actually remembered their incarnations. Otherwise, it's pure. Otherwise, it's horrible, right? So, this person who I was talking to, it was just a phone call. They were like, "There's a flaw in the system." They kept saying, "There's a flaw in the system."
I like that.
And
there's a glitch.
and I let them talk because
Yeah.
it's one of the most challenging things to grapple with, right? But there's I could go into potentially an example that splits into human evolution as well as cosmological evolution,
Okay.
and use that as context to approach this question. But honestly, the way I'd approach it now, just in the context of our conversation, is the pure fact that just like we can choose to be an asshole or not an asshole, our perspective is our choice. Our perspective is our choice. And so since that is the free will that we are given in this world, we can look at suffering and say that we are a victim to the world and victim to our circumstances. Or we can look at suffering as this grander existential thing that we have to grapple with. And as we grapple with it, we grow in our perspective. And when we grow in our perspective, we're able to overcome suffering by viewing it as something that needs to be reconciled, right? And if it wasn't for suffering, we wouldn't feel love. We wouldn't grow. We wouldn't feel that path of development. And just hearing that word and just coming to a conclusion like that will give people a reinforcing essence, an essence of reinforcement. And those essences of reinforcement are the voices of that which is true, of expansion. And so, yes, it is a tragedy, but it is also you who endured that suffering. It is also you who were, and this goes to show that if you're suffering over the thought of a child who is sick, right, the suffering exists inside of you as well, not just that child.
Right.
And it helps you understand the interconnectivity of this world, right? Because it exists for both of you. It exists for both of you, the same way that you were able to empathize with a memory of yourself that wrote a reflection so many years ago that you cringed at. You're able to look at something outside of yourself and connect to it. And you realize that that is what we are. We are all part of this one thing. And so when it comes to suffering, right, it is, the second the world was given free will of choice, right, that had to exist. And we are living in this dual world where if there is anything good, there is going to be a counterpart. And if there is anything bad, on the bright side, there's an opposite to suffering. And that's the size of the spectrum. And what our job here to do is not just to always go out and experience bliss and pleasure in this hedonistic way. What we're here to do is look at both sides of the pole and realize what they do in relation to our evolution, our expansion, right? And that's what love is. You love it for what it is, because it is nurturing us and enriching our growth.
That was the answer you were able to articulate to him or her?
I think that essence of
that's perfect. I mean, that's not especially, I don't know if they caught you off guard or you're like, oh, this person's calling me, but.
Well, luckily there was like some dialogue involved, because it's a response you really need to think about.
Yeah.
And even though I have thought about that, it's always a contemplation, because again, we are equally both of those things.
But one of the main themes, and by the way, I love everything you just said. It's definitely my wavelength, my mindset. And even in the darkest of moments of things, you just think, okay, well, where's the lesson here? Where's the opportunity? This is not being done, and I do remind myself and other people, this is not being done to me. It's not being done to you. Like, it's being done. It's just what's happening, so that you can choose the perspective of like, I'm suffering because of this, and you can have strong feelings towards something that's going on, of course, like, because it doesn't feel good, but we're not walking through life with a complete level of bliss. These things are going to come up, so choose your perspective of how you can navigate that so it doesn't eat away at you or completely consume you. And people listening might say, well, easy for so-and-so to say because she hasn't actually experienced blah, blah, blah. And there's always things for me that I will experience from this moment on, and things I have experienced that maybe this person doesn't even know about, but that's not even the thing. It's like, we've all have our experiences, and I still, from all the work I've been doing and I do, I still want to come at it in a perspective of, where's the opportunity here? What can I learn from this? Why? It's like, what is that, the saying of what you kind of just touched on was, if I have anxiety about something, then I'm actually going through that twice when it hasn't even happened yet. Like if something hasn't happened yet. Suffering. Absolutely. That is a level of suffering. So, like, why?
It's pain versus suffering. I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but I always resort to this story of the difference between pain versus suffering.
I don't think you have. So yeah, I'm curious to hear about it.
In the context of maybe an argument, right?
Okay.
What is pain versus suffering? So you're in an argument, and the imagery that this kind of parable uses is there's a river in between you and the person you're arguing with, and that person, with each segment of argument, right, with each stab they throw at you, they're shooting an arrow at you, right, and it'll hit you in the foot, for example. So by being hit with an arrow, that's pain. But if we dwell on things and dwell on things people say to us, that's suffering. So they say the imagery here is taking the arrow out of your foot and then going about your day and repeatedly stabbing yourself in the heart.
That's right.
So we might have talked about that.
No, a little bit.
But carrying things with us, right? That is certainly suffering that we can just let go of. But it's easier to let go of it when we can heal our wounds, right? We have to heal our wounds.
The word healing just came from me.
But they become stronger. I mean, that shows you, like, when we tear muscles, they heal and they become stronger, right? And bigger, they expand, right? It's, the scar tissue on any of the cuts that we get is the strongest part of our skin. And so we realize that, like, that is truly the nature of things. And again, someone saying that easy for you to say is just going back to the world of comparison. I'm about to quote the wrong person, but Joe Rogan has this amazing line, and I love him. I think he's a wise man. Yeah. But he says the worst thing that ever happened to somebody is the worst thing that ever happened to somebody. Right? So it doesn't matter how good or bad it is. It means it's going to impact that person from their perspective in the exact same depth that it'll impact somebody else. And so that person might not be equipped with the tools to deal with the shit that another person has been continuously going after. Focus on yourself and stop comparing our demise. And we think that, like, we'll find salvation from our demise by comparing it to other people. It's like, no, you are in demise because it is in your mind, because you haven't escaped that way of thinking, right? And so, again, the tools are in front of you, right? And you have them all. Right? You have them all, but we can't keep blaming the world for our circumstances. We can only do what we can with what's in front of us, and we can always be expanding from that. And that'll give you your own religion, right? One that belongs to you.
That's right.
Right? You don't have to worry about it. And look, this information, like, this is the information of the time. Right, this is the information of the time, this Aquarian age, right? Like, this is the information of the time. It's figure out how to cultivate a sense of, not a doctrine, but something very malleable, a worldview that exists, that serves you, right? That serves you. And you have all these reinforcements at your discretion. You have your body, you have your relationships, you have your financial status, you have your intuition. These are all tools that are telling you what's working and what's not working. And so when it comes to pain, suffering, right? Suffering is just simply a negative stimulus.
That's right.
It's a continuous negative stimulus, and it's telling you that it's something you need to grow from. And so when you have that, right, lingering in the back of your mind, it's just that you've neglected to serve this one cause and overcome it and grow from it. And it's actually a gift, it's a gesture. It's saying, once you do that, once you can find a way to find the love in this, then you are continuing on your path.
I just got goosebumps. That's the gift. That is the gift. And I agree with you with the comparison thing, very much so. And so it's you have your circumstances, you're in your circumstances, whatever that is for you. You're allowed to create what you want with the circumstances you have and been given, and then you continue. That's how you expand, create Go create it what you want. No one should stop you. Everyone should. The bright people will expand you and encourage you and empower you. And I did have this. I have the visual of the arrow in my foot and taking it out. And actually, what came to me actually was like, now I want to heal that wound. When some people, would walk around all day long, like stabbing themselves again and suffering within that mindset, rather than like the word healing came from me when you said it, and it was like, yes, allow that wound to heal. And how do you heal that wound? Whatever it is, you use your tools. You put your medicine on it. You clean it out. You purify it. You talk to it. You talk to yourself. Give yourself positive feedback and wrap it up, do that process again and again and practice that so that wound does heal. And healing is definitely one of my things I'm going through my journey for sure is the healings that I'm going through. That I has been for a little while now, but doing it in different ways, which is like one of the ways was the hypnotherapy last week.
One thing that's important about this analogy that no one ever really talks about, this element of it that no one ever talks about, is that when someone is after the fact, right, you've been shot with an arrow, regardless of if it becomes a healing thing or if it becomes a conversation about growth from pain or suffering, right, regardless of that, in that scenario where you get hit with an arrow and you take it out, no one gives a fuck about the arrow. Right?
No.
So it goes to show
right.
that the initial cause of the pain had nothing to do with the sequence of events that's going on, right? That sentence that someone said had nothing to do with what was actually going on, right? There are two contending warriors. The arrow is the thing that hurt somebody. Sure, it's the thing they said. But ultimately, so we can't get mad at the one thing people say to us.
Right.
We can't get mad at the one stab someone throws at us, right? Because it underlying beneath that is something that needed resolution. Yeah. And right. our job, right? Our job, if we shoot the arrow, we need to go help that person heal.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say something like that. Yeah.
And right. If we are hit by the arrow, right? We need to understand what's going to happen from that. We're going to grow back stronger. And those are the responsibilities. Seldom explicitly exposed in that metaphor.
And not throwing the arrow back at the person who threw it at you. Because that's what people do too, though.
They'll get theirs. That's the thing. They'll get theirs.
100%.
Because a person who shoots a lot of arrows gets into a lot of combat. And by the law of probability and all balancing forces, they're not going to win every match, right? So you let nature take its course, but you let yourself heal.
That's right.
It's not for us to play God.
So do not react by throwing the arrow back. Do not play God, is what I'm saying. And so yes, that person who threw the arrow can help that other person heal. Part of that could be part of the healing process. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a good point. And healing has its own journey, its own entity, its own whatever essence.
It's the same way we talk about truth as potentially being this other life. We can personify it, right, and deify it as this other thing that can embrace us and give us company. There's another, you could take any metaphysical concept, right, and apply the same. And healing's another one. But the thing about medicine is that you can create a business around medicine. And then it's not an incentive for the healers of the world to ever go out of business, right? We're in a capitalistic society, right, where we need to continue expanding and growing. And so if we give all this energy to medicine, and it becomes pharma, it becomes big pharma, and we know how that works. So the things that we devote ourselves to, right, need to have the right incentives in mind of expansion. And what healing does truly is it gives the amount of energy we give towards the concept and the life force and the being of healing gives the same amount of energy and existence to its counterpart, which is pain, wound, suffering, things like that. And so it's the same as the what is it, bad man but a good man's job, and what is a good man but a bad man's teacher, right? It's we can heal the wounds in the world, but we can't deify being a healer or healing, because the virtue of that is actively creating just as much that needs to be healed.
That could be the virtue of that, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, the word medicine is interesting, listening to certain podcasts about that, but the word medicine can also be organic in the sense of, like, I find what we're doing medicinal. Like the one, what's the word I'm looking for? The medicine that's in a bottle that you think is going to cure that wound, when it's just masking it. It's actually not allowing the wound to heal, or in order to be stronger. But yeah, the medicinal side of medicine could be the love, compassion, support of coming from another person, or whatever it is that works for you, that can help that. So it can be a good medicine, I guess, out there too.
I consider it alignment. Because if you consider it alignment, then you don't have to look at the rest of your world as things that need healing, right? It's like, okay, this gives me context of what being aligned is, and then you can start to apply that to the rest of your world, right? And it's not that mine's better than yours. It's that it opens more doors for me to have a healthier perspective on things that aren't this, even though I love and cherish this, because it is absolute alignment, right? And so, like, these subtle perspective changes might, I don't know if it will, but it might, like, be something that, like, can adjust the way we view things that are not this.
Say that again? Can it? Do you remember what you just said?
I never really remember what I just said, because I'm
like, wait, say that again.
I haven't premeditated it.
That's right.
Right. But the but the sentiment of what I'm talking about, right, is a subtle perspective change in the words that we use to describe things will change our cognition on different components of our lives, right? We're doing something we love that makes us feel aligned. By calling it medicine, that means that it is resolving something from the past of our lives. So our brain automatically associates this with something that we're dependent on in order to cure the rest of our lives. Whereas if we call this a point of being aligned, that means we can use it as context to orient ourselves when we're not feeling aligned. But it doesn't make us think that everything that exists outside of this is something that needs fixing.
That's right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. 100%.
And that's just my perspective.
True. I can still call it medicine if I want to.
For sure. For sure.
But no, I said, again, like, when you use those words, I don't want to put a constraint on it as well. But it's like, it's just having a new perspective on that word. We're opening yourself up to, it doesn't have to be, turn into the whole pharma thing, which is interesting. And this is like, I don't know, I guess a little sidebar. But you know our building where I live, and so there's like these like cabinets, and I actually, that was one of the things I did this morning. I've been doing a lot of cleansing lately in so many different forms, and one of them today was cleansing all of these things. And I don't have that many, actually. I would say my boys have more cosmetic thingies and medicines and things that I do. Maybe not so much Shay, but so I did massive cleansing of these. And I just thought, like, where do these medicines even come? Talk about medicines come from. Most of them did not even have my name on them, but it was just other people's names in the house, and I checked them all. I felt so good. I was like, "Ooh, we don't."
Mom, that's my Adderall that I stole off of it. There's something in that. Are you going somewhere? So hold the thought if you're going somewhere.
No, it just felt good. But it
felt good.
Yeah,
so
it was therapeutic.
The sentiment, I think, is important, embedded in what you're talking about, is the fact that the things that feel best aren't things that we consume. It's not we're consuming medicine. The things that feel the most medicinal are the things that we're letting go of, that we're cleansing out of us, right? And so that's an important distinction to make, because we don't need to swallow pills in order to feel good. And I know that one is a sensitive one, but what I'm saying is, in the context of relationships, things, that we try and consume in order to make us feel good, right? Whether it's food or stuff that we think gives us comfort. Actually, the relinquishment of things and the clutter gives us a really good feeling, a really, really good feeling. And I think that's an important reminder, and that's something you've brought up in the past as well, where it's like, what can I let go of that isn't serving me to make room for something else, right?
It's so freaking true. Not that I want to put more, and I'm not doing that today. Like that's something in that example today, like cleaning out the stuff I just don't need or want or whatever. It just arrived in the cabinets because I have more cabinet space. But it's just like, just cleaning that out felt so therapeutic, and I'm not looking to fill it necessarily with things I don't need. I like the things that are in there now, and I don't necessarily need anything else. And also use up what you got, use the things that we already have, and instead of like consuming and things that I don't need or want and like taking up space and clutter. Because when I do cleanse that out, but therapeutically cleansing lately has been, if I'm just talking about people, I've just had other people come into my life in the last even few weeks, month, whatever, from cleansing others. And that might sound harsh, but it's just like, this is not serving me at this time. Doesn't mean it's 100% like the door shut and locked and closed, whatever. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Not for me to decide, for the universe to decide. And having faith in that, the connections I've made have been just like, I don't think I would have made these connections, hard to know, if I didn't have the space.
Yeah.
Right.
And what this process does is it completely solidifies those neural pathways, right? Because you've made room in your own mind. Then you've made room in terms of your relationships. And now you're making room in terms of your house and your cleanliness. You're like, now I actually understand what I should have been doing all along, right? And when you do that, there's a learning. This can be applied to anything, right? When I look at the orientation of my life and there's something that doesn't feel aligned, I immediately try and associate with that, with some type of pattern that's been going on in my own mind that has been creating that circumstance. I don't blame anything. I don't look at the outer world. It's like, what habit of thought do I have that makes this my immediate surroundings? And the outer world takes time to reflect what's going on in the mind. It just simply does. And so there's an element of patience involved with this, right? We can't just expect every void to be automatically transacted. It's just like, let it come, because something also might have to blossom into what you're now deserving of, right? There's this, but you can take this and apply it to anything. I actually noticed that we have a pretty balanced audience, so there's equal men and women on the show, which is pretty interesting to me. And so the thing that so when it comes to like an example of this wave of a new neural pathway, right? Dating or asking somebody out, we have this like fear of rejection, right? But if you go and like just like having like a human conversation with someone, not trying bullshit, right? Like if you go and try to interact with someone and like genuinely want to get to know them, you'll realize that even if they're like, I'm not interested, that you're still alive and everything's fine. And then you do it again and you do it again, and you feel like incredibly liberated. It can be with like attraction, but it can be with just interacting with human beings throughout every progression of your day. Life is so much more interesting when you're talking to the person next to you. And so when you realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, you become intoxicated by the goodness of the feeling of it. Same goes for like clearing out the things that don't speak to you, right? It can be a subtraction, but it can also be a positive thing where you're introducing things that speak more to you, right? And you realize that you are free. You are free in this thing to do this cleanse, right? To do this cleanse. And by doing this cleanse, like of overcoming the challenges, of removing the things that don't speak to you, you are more and more aligned with exactly where you need to be in your mind, then in your body, then in your outer world.
That's right. That's absolutely spot on. Yeah.
You wanna dance, I wanna leave, slide of the hand that you never seen. You wanna dance, you don't know how to get it on the floor, and don't hold back for anyone. Close your eyes, just follow me in the light. You count on me.
Thank you for joining us in the alternative space. We hope sincerely that our time together has left you with something new to consider and awakened new powers within you that may have been dormant. It is our promise to you, our listeners, that we will continue to advance our wisdoms alongside the production of the show to become a continuously more enriching and expansive experience. We've been lucky to receive many questions from those of you who have been on this journey alongside with us. So we've decided to open up a platform where you can meet with us each one-on-one to tap into personal aspects of your daily life that you've been working on. If a session like this speaks to you, please find the details within our show notes. Our sessions are 100% donation-based, with proceeds funneled directly back into the show. Lastly, friends, as you go on your day to come, we send you off with absolute love and appreciation. Talk to you next week.